17 years since the release of Twilight. Can y'all believe it's been that long? Twilight defined a generation or two with its central supernatural love story, boasting a beautiful soundtrack perfectly curated for all the cutting teenagers who fantasized about death. Twilight was a cultural shift, one that I remember sort of well. The saga's success was through the roof, and undeniably inspired many others to copy-paste the story, change up a few details, and call it 50 Shades of Grey or 365 Days. Revisiting this franchise 17 years later was truly an out-of-body experience, because I did not remember how terrible the acting actually was, or how toxic, borderline abusive the story was from the very beginning. But it didn't matter. I too, as an angsty teenager, daydreamed about being courted by Dracula's weird gay-looking friend who lives in the middle of the woods in a commune of incestuous, pale-looking Tokyo Hotel impersonators that only drink rabbit blood and keep all sexual relationships within the family. But Twilight was also known for its overuse of blue and gray tones, giving it a horrendously ugly color palette for all the sad emo kids of the world. A choice that was slowly abandoned as the film progressed because I think they realized that this shit looks terrible. Everyone knows this story, and a lot has been said about this film series. There's not a joke in the world I can write and tell that hasn't been written and told before. But I did do a super marathon with my mom where we watched all 5 films. 10 long hours of my life that I'm never getting back, so I might as well make the most of it.
I'd never given much thought to how I would die, but dying in the place of someone I love seems like a good way to go.
So Twilight's about the love story between a very old vampire and a teenage girl. The vampirism is of course a metaphor for toxic masculinity, men's innate, violent, predatory nature, where Edward is the hero because he won't drink your blood, he can control himself no matter how tasty you smell. He'll just groom you from the ripe age of 17 years. And throughout all 5 films, because they had to split the 4th book into 2 parts to squeeze more juice out of this already anemic cow, we follow awkward 17-year-old teenager Bella, Isabella Swan, and creepy 109-year-old vampire Edward Cullen, as they struggle to converse with each other without looking constipated or anxious, against a backdrop of the biggest, palest cast of who's gonna have a career after this, and who will forever be remembered as that creepy, inbred-looking, slow-motion walking background characters who are there to serve very specific purposes, sell you an aesthetic to distract you from the story. And that worked on 13-year-old me. Charlie, Bella's dad, is by far the best character in the movies. First and foremost, he's hot. I'd do him raw. Next question. But if we told the story from his perspective, we'd see a divorced father whose angry teenage daughter is groomed by a senior citizen days after she moves in with him, and by the end, he has a CGI granddaughter. Starring Edward, a creepy, overbearing, pale senior citizen who likes him young. Bella, awkward teenager and inventor of feminism.
You should ask him. Take control. You're a strong, independent woman.
Real women vote for Trump!
She's not like other girls. She writes in her diary while her friends shop for prom dresses. Jacob, a teenager turned heartthrob who Bella hangs out with only to talk about Edward. And while you're at it, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and stick around because we're gonna recap and mock the entire Twilight Saga franchise thing, because I have nothing but time on my hands. And boy, is this gonna take a while, so buckle up!
You better hold on tight, spider monkey.
Meet Bella, an awkward, angsty teenager who is allergic to attention.
I'm really kind of the more suffer in silence type.
Her mom is going on a trip with her boyfriend, so she moves to Forks because spoons and knives were taken, and she takes her most prized possession with her, a tiny cactus. She's incredibly unfunny and awkward, but she is the main character, so she quickly befriends a group of teenagers she doesn't particularly like or even hangs out with unless she doesn't have anything else to do. And you'll see these friends in every single movie except the last one because the budget was spent on CGI babies. And it's in this high school that Bella meets the Cullens, a group of pale, incest-driven siblings who walk in slow motion and look like an Eastern European group of anemic homosexuals who started a cover band for 2000's understated rock bands. Alice is the quirky weirdo Ashley Greene will forever be known as, or haunted by. Rosalie is there to be a Bella hater until we realize by the third film she doesn't hate Bella, she just hates how impulsively moronic she is. Emmett is the resident muscle meathead, he's mostly there, he's cool. And Jasper, the creepy, silent Jeffrey Dahmer type guy who mostly stares. Twilight actually inspired Ben Platt's look as a wax-looking teenager in Dear Evan Hansen. During their first biology class together, Edward struggles to contain how repulsed Bella's presence and general smell makes him feel. In fact, he struggles more during this class than J.K. Rowling when she hasn't tweeted something transphobic in more than 5 hours. The stench is enough for him to skip school for a few days, but nothing in this world will make us forget how unsettled he looked. Until, of course, the car scene. A van swerves and heads directly towards Bella. Bella freezes in time, because that's mostly what she does. She freezes, doesn't make decisions, or generally care for her own well-being. But Edward stops the car, moving at supernatural speed with supernatural strength. And this kickstarts the fateful romance between Bella and Edward, as they mostly argue and look unhappy in each other's presence. Her and Edward's interactions play out like two prototype robots whose speech and body language patterns were modeled after Elon Musk.
How did you know about that?
You didn't answer my question.
Oh, you don't answer any of mine, so... I mean, you don't even say hi to me.
Hi.
And I just want to know who gave Robert Pattinson the direction to look like he's always waiting for a very deep fart to descend before setting it loose on the world. After the impossible car stunt, Bella is curious, inquisitive, overbearing really, and after a quick Google search, she puts 2 and 2 together and realizes that Edward is a vampire. And like any reckless teenager who wants to jump in a bathtub while holding a toaster that's plugged into the socket, she doesn't care that he could drain her of her blood, kill her in an instant, or that he finds her stench intoxicatingly inviting. He's pale, kinda cute, and she lives in Forks, which is way worse than Spoons. She wants to bang. She wants to bang Edward more than Bonnie Blue wants to bang barely legal teenagers when she visits a university. And in a very interesting scene, Edward leads Bella into the woods and he reveals his true nature, his vampiric nature. He has glittery skin and he really wants to kill Bella. He can also read everybody's minds except for Bella's, which is why he looked so constipated and uncomfortable during that entire biology class. He just couldn't invade her mind's privacy. What a gentleman, what a romantic guy. After this, Bella knows 3 very simple things. 1, Edward's a vampire. 2, a part of him thirsts for her blood. 3, she is irreparably in love with him. And that lets us know one thing. Bella is a moron with a high libido and a death wish. A little backstory on the Cullens, Edward's incestuous family. They were all turned by Carlisle, a doctor/benevolent vampire who believes in giving people second chances when they're just about to die. And he has a very specific philosophy of vegetarianism, which means they only hunt and kill animals to drink their blood, no humans. Which is like the vegans of Vampire, which according to Edward is like, you survive on it, but you're never fully satisfied. Like straight for gays or being transphobic for J.K. Rowling. After getting saved by Edward, because he's always there, spying on her, making sure that nothing bad happens to her, Bella decides she wants to be a vampire. And that could never be me, because in this world, vampires never sleep, and I love my naps. Like, imagine how boring life would be if you never, ever, ever got to sleep. Like, what are you gonna do with 24 hours in the day, every single day, one after the other, consecutively, no stops? It's gotta be tough. I would go on a murderous killing spree and just kill everyone, kill all the billionaires and drink their blood, make them feed the apex predator of the world. Glittery vampires. Vampires who glow under the sun like vajazzles. But also, Edward is very predatory, and because he's hot and he's cute and our main female character is pining after him, we don't necessarily discuss how abusive some of his actions actually are. Like, he's constantly on Bella's asshole. He breaks into her room and watches her sleep, which is beyond creepy. And he has the nerve to blame her after she gets attacked by a group of men at night. He victim blames.
You at least watch where you walk.
A 109-year-old vampire who victim blames. That's what everyone was thirsting after. And 2008. But some things never change because now they're thirsting after Nosferatu, which is going to be an upcoming video soon because the discourse is insane. But this story couldn't be sustained with an unconvincing love story between a senior citizen and a teenager who never smiles. Their lack of chemistry defies laws of nature almost as much as they defy the appeal of this story. So to spice it up and add an antagonist to this story, we see a group of vampires lurking in the shadows and killing fishermen. By now, everyone has called this group the Black Eyed Peas, so I won't. This is that weird-looking throuple that you can't really take anywhere to meet new people because they're always trying to recruit someone else to meet them in the bedroom late at night. You got Laurent and Victoria, who are obviously the primary couple because they got cool names, and the other one is James, the creepy hot guy that the couple used to bait other hotties into joining them in the bedroom. So, American country music group Lady Antebellum have a run-in with the Cullens during a baseball game in the woods. A game they can only play when it's thunderous, because when they hit the ball with a baseball bat, it sounds like thunder. And I'm forever grateful that they meet because as soon as James gets a whiff of the stench Bella exudes from her human pale-looking body, and you may think this woman is not worth all the drama, but you gotta remember that Bella is in a small town. And she's the new girl in said small town, so everybody's gonna want a piece of that. But no one can touch her because the Cullens are effectively offering her protection. They're like her bodyguards. But don't worry, that won't stop Reject Magic Mike from making his move. And by the end of the film, Bella is lured by James to her old ballet school just to get attacked before Edward arrives to save the day. He kills James with the help of the other inbred Cullens and then sucks the poison out of Bella's arm because she was bitten by James. Now, if Edward hadn't done this, we could have skipped the next 2 films and gone straight into Breaking Dawn, but he had to be the good guy according to his own standards and ignore the wishes of his girlfriend, and she is human and saved.
Go away.
New Moon should be called New Love Triangle. We get some sort of plot and an ongoing antagonistic force that is gonna carry through to the 3rd film, but this movie primarily exists to establish the love triangle between Bella, Edward, and Jacob. On the left, 109-year-old Edward, full-time vampire, part-time groomer. If you're a depressed 17-year-old teenage white girl from Florida who just doesn't fit in, he'll definitely notice you. On the right, 15 going on 16 long-haired teenage boy who goes through a haircut and puberty. If you're a socially awkward 17-year-old teenage girl whose father you kind of know, he'll always be there to support you, no matter what. This one is where Bella goes through the most emotional turmoil of the entire series, even more so than when she's literally being sucked dry by her fetus 2 weeks after conception. This film is the representation for all the Tumblr depressed tweens of the late 2000s. The youth united together to watch the love triangle that was never meant to happen in a drawn-out long story that an author built around a dream she had one day where she was in the grass. The film also ditches the blue and gray tones of the first film because Edward is mostly gone, and is known for revising Taylor Lautner's contract mid-filming to ensure that he be shirtless for 80 to 90% of his remaining shots. Don't worry, he eventually found a t-shirt. So in New Moon, Bella is going through an existential crisis with her upcoming 18th birthday because she's getting older, and there's nothing worse than getting older, other than gays in long shorts and sandals who vote for Trump. She's traumatized because she'll become older than her 109-year-old vampire boyfriend was when he was turned and stopped aging. New Moon is about a breakup and subsequent reconciliation and a lot of new lore. For example, vampires have laws, mostly set and controlled by the Volturi, who are like the Vatican if the Vatican was full of flamboyant, pale gay men who use their status to abuse people against their will. So exactly like the Vatican. As we all know, Bella is a clumsy girl, a relatable quality for all of the tweens out there who are still deciding who they choose, Nosferatu or Lassie. So on her 18th birthday, at Edward's house party he throws for her with his creepy family, she cuts her finger on an envelope, only to be pushed across the room by her 100-year-old boyfriend to avoid the attack of the newest vegetarian of his family. The funniest thing is he didn't have to throw her across the room when he threw Jasper across the opposite side of the room, but we got to see her bleeding more and more vampire hissing. And this event is enough for Edward to flex his protective, overbearing, abusive muscles and break up with Bella, so she's no longer in danger of being attacked by a vampire with little self-control and a lot of thirst. So, like, he's leaving the depressed, borderline suicidal teenager all on her own for her safety. And he does this in the middle of the woods to not risk Bella causing a scene and revealing to everyone that Edward was born when the world was in black and white. So Bella's depressed, completing her metamorphosis, watching the seasons change from her bedroom window, an iconic scene that so many Tokyo Hotel diehard fans found relatable. But the real victim is Charlie, a working police officer who can no longer sleep because his daughter wakes up every night screeching. He does voice his concerns to Bella because he is the only voice of reason in this entire franchise. So she starts hanging out with her neighbor and sort of family friend Jacob and helps him fix a bike. And they do have chemistry, they do talk, and Bella does finally start smiling and laughing, almost like she actually gets along with him and isn't just completely besmitten by the lore of being a vampire. And in her rebel phase, going against her overprotective senior boyfriend's advice, Bella starts living on edge, like getting rides from strangers or riding a motorcycle without using the brakes. This is all so she can see visions of Edward telling her off and asking her to protect herself, all while she ignores him.
I was about to end up in an FBI interview room like some lame TV show. Could have been a Psycho. You're an adrenaline junkie now? That's cool. You can go bungee jumping. You don't get on the back of some random loser's motorcycle.
And at one point in the movie, Jacob goes through a steroid-induced puberty, comes back without a shirt and with a lot more muscles. And this was, of course, when Taylor Lautner's contract was changed. He was almost recast, but he told them no. I will bulk up for this role. And boy, were all the teenage girls excited about him. This was the minor character from the first film, put there just to explain some of the lore around the Cullens, who's now being introduced as the main love interest of a story that people are only watching to see Edward and Bella. But Edward is gone for most of the film, so we gotta be happy with Jacob and the double date that she goes on with Jacob and that other kid from class, which was a really weird, awkward date that culminates with nothing. So Jacob eventually transforms into a werewolf for the first time. He finds out that he does come from a tribe that has werewolf powers, and he learns about the Cullens being vampires, and he's really angry that Bella lied to everyone.
You've been lying to everyone. Charlie.
But it's great because it's raining and his abs are out. Also, Laurent from the throuple of the first film makes an appearance. He's the antagonistic force of this film other than teenage depression. And he threatens Bella, but dies straight after because now the werewolves are also protecting Bella. It's like all the supernatural creatures of this universe are banding together to protect this one white woman who puts herself in dangerous situations non-stop. In fact, this franchise should be called Saving Bella Swan, a saga where Bella Swan is in danger and has to choose between necrophilia and zoophilia. The dumbest misunderstanding also kickstarts Act 3. Edward is in Rio, Brazil for some reason, and he calls Bella. Jacob answers the phone right in front of Bella and tells Edward that Charlie's getting ready for a funeral. And this makes Edward think that Bella is dead and Charlie's getting ready for his daughter's funeral. And now we can't even call him and tell him the truth because he destroyed his phone with his vampiric force. So unwilling to live in a world without Isabella Swan, he decides to end his existence by exposing his glittery body to a crowd of humans to force the gay Vatican to kill him in Italy at a festival that celebrates the banishment of vampires from the village, which in real life is actually about the end of fascism, but Stephanie Meyer thinks that Europeans are into vampires and shit. Luckily, in the nick of time, Bella stops Edward from making a catastrophic mistake and ending his life over a dumb misunderstanding. So dumb. And they're then allowed to leave by the cast of My Priest's Not Gay, under the condition that Bella is turned into a vampire because she knows too much about these guys. You know, she did a Google search. That's dangerous. By the end of this film, Jacob and Edward have their first pissing contest because Jacob is now also irrevocably in love with Bella. And Edward then agrees to turn Bella into a vampire under one condition. They have to marry first. And she accepts. So they end the film engaged.
You don't trust me.
The third entry of this franchise has one purpose only: character assassination of Jacob. I think they realized that they made him too sympathetic in the second one, and people were actually realizing that maybe Jacob is a better love interest for Bella than Edward is, and maybe she shouldn't be turned into a vampire. Maybe she should just live out her days with a nice werewolf that won't put her at risk every single time they get together. But endgame has to be Edward, so once a beloved fan favorite, Jacob is now the desperate weird guy who can't take no for an answer and thinks he knows what you want better than you. It's also when the love triangle is at its most fervent iteration, the film that stoked the fire of the heavily debated debate, Team Edward versus Team Jacob. Me personally, I was Team Charlie, the dad who still makes appearances, few and far in between, whenever we need a reminder that Bella is still an 18-year-old high school student, not an independent adult at all. And to help carry the two most insipid romantic leads the romance genre has ever seen, Twilight Eclipse recasts an adversary of the past, Victoria, now played by a Nepo baby. She's hellbent on taking Edward's lover, much like Edward took hers back in the first film, if you still remember that. And she creates an army of newborn vampires. Newborn vampires are those recently turned vampires that are at their strongest ever because they still have human blood coursing through their veins. And that sure makes a lot of sense, right? It's also the movie of backstories. We see how the rivalry between wolves and bats began. Spoiler alert, another misunderstanding. We also see Rosalie's backstory, what led to her imminent death, which then Carlisle avoided by turning her into a vampire. Spoiler alert, she said no to men. And there's Jasper, who turns out fought in the Civil War for the Confederate Army. He also has a southern twang all of a sudden.
I didn't have quite the same upbringing as my adopted siblings. All the training the Confederate Army gave me, battle scars.
Stephanie Meyer. Girl, we need to talk. Also, Bella has a wig and is very horny, but Edward spends the entire film telling her that it's very dangerous to have sex with him. And when asked about said danger, he just says, I want us to be married first. You should never marry someone until you sleep with them because sexual compatibility is actually very important for the duration of a relationship, especially if you're considering becoming a vampire for eternity for that person. Imagine that she becomes a vampire and then actually the sex is really bad and she hates not sleeping. What then? Maybe she is being impulsive. Maybe she is a moron. But he's a traditional guy, so he wants to wait until marriage. And hopefully this is the only tradition that he wants to uphold, because the world is rough for women right now, but back then, it was way rougher. And the whole movie is people basically telling Bella what to do, and by people, I mean Jacob and Edward. Jacob is angry that she wants to become a vampire to be with Edward because he is the better candidate to make her happy. He is, after all, in love with her, and that's pretty much the only requisite in this story for anyone to be with Bella. Doesn't matter what she wants or thinks, because she's a stupid teenage girl, dumb. And Edward mostly hopes that she'll change her mind and not want to be a vampire anymore. And while I'm certainly completely against men trying to take women's agency, I do think that in this case, Bella should go to a therapist because she has a very poor track record of making bad decisions and putting herself in really stupid situations because she is impulsive and she is a bit of a moron. And I genuinely think that she does not know what is best for her. But neither does Jacob. At one point, Jacob sexually assaults Bella, forcibly kisses her, to the point where she punches him in the face, and because he's a werewolf, she actually sprains her wrist. And then he gets Edward, the king of disrespecting people's boundaries, to give him a lesson in consent.
If you ever touch her against her will again,
Don't do this
She's
here.
not
Don't-
sure what she wants.
So really, there's no smart characters around other than Charlie. Charlie's the MVP. Eclipse is a movie that ruins Jacob's character, so everyone who was Team Jacob at one point forcibly removes themselves from that toxic group, and I guess rejoins Team Edward because there's no third option, even though there should be. I'm Team Single Bella, rediscovering herself in a big city, a pansexual artist who hosts a podcast where she talks about her two toxic ex-boyfriends and how she escaped the town of Forks to move to the town Spoons. Also, vampires and werewolves, mortal enemies throughout millennia, team up to defend Bella. She's able to squash ancient rivalries because these two are in love with her. They team up to fight Victoria's army of newborns, and they take Bella to the highest, coldest mountain there is. And in this one camping scene, Jacob has to cuddle Bella all night because he is 108 degrees. 42 Celsius for all my non-American viewers.
I am hotter than you.
And he does this right in front of Edward because Edward is a cold-blooded monster who can't keep his girlfriend warm. And they bond.
Can you at least attempt to control your thoughts?
And just the day after, Jacob overhears Bella and Edward talk about their engagement. So Bella naturally begs Jacob to kiss her, and they make out for a very long, uncomfortable amount of time, which is made even worse when you consider that Edward, the guy who can read people's minds, therefore can read Jacob's mind, is right there, right next to them, just waiting for them to stop smacking lips. But don't worry, Edward is not angry. You know, this could have been the start of something new. It feels so right to be there with them. Edward is very understanding because he knows that Bella's in love with Jacob as much as she's in love with Edward. Anyway, the vampires and werewolves eventually defeat Victoria's army. Edward kills Victoria. The gay Vatican make an appearance, and they're assured that there is a date set for when Bella's gonna become a vampire after the wedding.
You look terrible.
We're now at the last book, but second to last film. Because for popular book franchise adaptations, the last entry is always salacious enough that with some clever story stretching, you can turn it into two piggy banks. The Hunger Games, Harry Potter, Divergent, almost. And now Twilight, Breaking Dawn, Part 1 and 2. And though there's two movies, I could really just talk about them as one film because though a lot happens, not a lot happens. Part 1 is Bella and Edward's love story, and then Bella's horror story. The first half hour of the movie, yes, I checked, is all about the wedding between a teenage girl and an immortal pussy. Jacob receives a wedding invitation, and by his contract, the first 2 minutes, and he's already shirtless running in the rain. Bella's father, Charlie, doesn't seem too happy with Bella's decision to marry into Forks' family of inbreds, but her mother is ecstatic. She's from Florida, so she has no problem with cousins and siblings each other. The movie gives us the full wedding fantasy by making it last as long as an actual ceremony would. We get the full experience of watching people chatter before the groom and bride show up. We have snide comments from jealous friends.
I think Bella's gonna be showing.
Jess, she is not pregnant.
Okay. Who else gets married at 18?
But it's all worth it to see the culmination of this epic love story conclusion in this two-parter last chapter between the least charismatic people you'll ever see. Doesn't she look happy? Finally done with the wedding, they travel to Edward's favorite destination, Brazil, Rio de Janeiro. That's how they say it. I say Rio de Janeiro. Nah, no Brasil. And don't let Bella's face fool you. She is indeed very, very happy somewhere under all of that face. And listen, I absolutely love the fact that they go to Brazil because we get Edward speaking Brazilian Portuguese. This is also a very good moment to remind the viewers that the Cullens are wildly rich, either centuries-long hoarding of wealth or crypto. So the newlywed couple stay at this beautiful mansion by the beach in an island that Carlisle either gifted them or bought them. It's not specified, but look how pretty. And finally, Bella does what she's longed for since Twilight. Sleep with a vampire. So while Edward marinates in the cold waters of the Atlantic Ocean, Bella brushes her teeth, brushes her hair in distress, shaves her legs, has an emotional breakdown over all the sexy lingerie at her disposal, and eventually, after a 5-long-hour sequence, she joins her husband naked. All that to go in her birthday suit. So they finally sleep together, which lasts a total of 10 seconds, and Bella finally understands why it is so dangerous to have sex with a vampire. Bruises. Tons and tons of bruises. But the worst is yet to come as Bella realizes after just a couple of sexy raunchy moments, she is pregnant. Already. Now, this is not specified, but I think Edward has super sperm, and I choose to believe that he used protection, but his super spunk just burst through the condom and attacked her eggs. And this is where the horror element kicks in. Bella's pregnancy develops really fast, coming to term in just 2 weeks. Everyone's freaking out because a vampire impregnating a human is unheard of, and despite everyone's protests, including a very angry Jacob, who still seems hung up on the fact that Bella chose Edward and not him, Bella wants to carry this child, knowing full well that it'll kill her. Remember, she's reckless and she used to daydream about jumping into a hot tub full of water while holding a toaster that's plugged into the socket. And if certain death wasn't difficult enough, Jacob's pack vow to kill Bella before she can give birth on the assumption that the baby will undoubtedly be a bloodthirsty killer that nobody can stop, and it will certainly terrorize humans everywhere. It's a baby. And though it may seem incredibly obvious that what the visibly emaciated Bella would need to feed her half-vampire child in her uterus is blood, it only occurs to this family to try it once Bella's about to burst. And there's a doctor in this family that's been a vampire for hundreds of years. Also, did I mention what Bella wants to name the baby? So if it's a boy, EJ, Edward Jacob, and if it's a girl, Renesmee. From Renee and Esme, the grandmothers. Beautiful choices Stephanie was making when writing this. Jacob is now always around. He's left his pack because he refuses to help them kill a pregnant woman, but he also feels strangely drawn to her, and she really likes having him around. It brings her comfort, which has a really ominous reason for it, which we'll get to in a second. And suddenly out of nowhere, Bella goes into labor. And you know how we know that? Because the baby breaks her spine. She literally contorts back. Twilight quickly goes from eating disorder movie to body horror feature. Bella starts screaming because the baby is literally crushing all of her bones to dust. And in case you needed another reason to never have babies again, they have to cut her open before the morphine even kicks in, because they're running out of time. Edward bites her, so hopefully the vampire blood can save her in these last few moments of life she has left. But to no avail. She gives birth to a beautiful baby girl, despite spending the entire film talking about the baby like it's a boy, and she dies. She bleeds to death. And then, hours after dying a painful yet totally avoidable death, teenage reckless Bella starts transforming into a vampire. The venom bonding her bones back together, granting her the same pale skin she had before dying, but a cool new set of creepy red eyes. Breaking Dawn Part 2. If you're still there, congratulations, you're a very particular type of masochist who would put themselves through this entire video just to hear regurgitated jokes about Twilight. Now seems like a great chance to reveal that Stephenie Meyer was actually a Mormon, or has strong Mormon ties, origins, which explains why Bella's so desperate to be with Edward to her own detriment, why Edward wanted to get married before sleeping with her, and why Bella got pregnant the night she lost her virginity. After all, Mormons exist solely to couple up and procreate, even in vampire form. And some have also said that this vampire obsession is representative of Mormons wanting to experiment, step outside their male-centered religion, to explore their own deepest, darkest desires.
My pronouns are USA.
My pronouns are USA. How about it, huh?
My name is Ted Cruz, and my pronouns are kiss my ass.
My pronouns are kiss my ass.
And Breaking Dawn Part 2 is immensely stretched to fill in the now regular 2-hour-long films of this franchise, and it shows. Sure, Twilight had long, overdrawn shots and sequences of Bella and Edward existing, but this entry seems particularly pointlessly long, considering the entire third act was never in the book, and the second act is exactly the same as the second act of the third film. It's a lot of recycling. Bella's now a vampire, right? And the movie starts with her admiring her new body, her same skin tone, but her new eyes and her strength. And before she even meets the child she literally birthed that killed her, she goes hunting for blood. You might remember 2 movies ago when the lore stated that newborn vampires were very strong but also impulsive and ravenous. Well, Bella's not like the other girls. In high school, she was writing in her diary when her friends were shopping for prom dresses. And as a vampire, she can abandon the scent of a human mid-hunt, which is challenging even to the most expert of vampires. Her superpower is exactly what she lacked when she was human: self-restraint. And when it's finally time to see the daughter that she birthed, Bella learns something truly unsettling. And I don't think we as a society are discussing enough what it means or what Stephanie meant to mean. See, werewolves imprint on others, meaning that sometimes they meet the one, their soulmate. And by imprinting, their sole mission in life becomes the well-being and happiness of that one person. That person's safety is the only thing that matters more than life itself. It's something they can't control, and the most sacred werewolf law is that werewolves can't kill someone that has been imprinted on. So when Jacob tried to murder the CGI baby that killed the woman that he loved more than anything in the world, he ended up imprinting on her instead. So now his sole mission is to protect her and one day partner up with her. A lot of things to unpack, but first things first, good news. The wolves can't kill her because Jacob's imprinted on her, and they have the sacred law. But now the rest. This full-grown man, who a couple of months ago wanted Bella to break up with Edward and run off with him, has now claimed her newborn digitally altered child as his own. His soulmate is a baby. And for the rest of the film, we see Jacob act like a father, friend, doting husband, to a literal toddler. We also hear that's why Jacob was so attracted to Bella in the first place, and why Bella was weirdly attracted to Jacob too. It was merely that one egg inside of her that ended up getting fertilized by Edward's super sperm that already felt the connection with Jacob. So Jacob was hitting on Bella this entire time because he had the hots for her egg, and now he has the hots for a baby. Yeah, okay. Stephanie is a curious mind. Also, Renesmee is played by one actress only, and then all younger and older iterations are modeled after her face, I guess for continuity. This, of course, gives us the creepiest visuals of the entire franchise, and sure, you're only hiring one actress, but is it worth having her look unnaturally demonic for the sake of keeping a similar face structure for all flashbacks and flash forwards? I'll let you be the judge of that. But peace in paradise doesn't last, and for the last Bella and Edward-centered story, we are bringing back the gay Vatican. One of the cousins spots Bella and Jacob and his toddler girlfriend playing around in the woods, and she sees the child fly, assumes that's the child that was turned into a vampire, and she snitches to the vampire's homosexual pope. Because in Twilight universe, it is forbidden to turn children into vampires because it stunts their growth and renders them unpredictable and wild, capable of ravaging entire villages over a small, tiny tantrum and threatening the secrecy of vampires' existence. And though Renesmee isn't one and everyone can read each other's minds and feel each other's feelings, that's how they keep meeting up in the woods without ever texting each other, it's very difficult that this child who keeps growing at alarming rates isn't actually a stunted vampire child and is in fact the product of the sexual intercourse between a vampire and a human. The MAGA Christian gays are now on a mission to kill the Cullens, and the Cullens are on their own mission to gather witnesses willing to risk their lives for a child they've never met. And surprisingly, these vampires who kill people for a living are willing to risk their centuries-long existence for, once again, a child. Among them is the Freddie Mercury playing Avatar because he can manipulate all elements. And the wolves also join because this grown man is grooming a toddler and they all practice fighting in the woods like they did in the third film. And for those still wondering whether Bella had anything going on in her empty head, that was a precursor to her vampire power, a shield. A shield to protect her from other vampires' powers. A shield she can extend to others so Dakota Fanning can no longer terrorize people with her performance in this. It all culminates in a big CGI showdown between Cullens and friends and the gay Vatican, who also brought the gay Illuminati. And though I've joked about the Cullens inbreeding, I'm like sure these guys actually do inbreed. Like it's like hair and makeup made them look like what happened after Flowers in the Attic. There's a big fight, mostly because Arrow, the gay lore supreme, can't admit he's wrong as much as he can't control his excitement over seeing a child, and like any other priest, he wants to touch her. So they all fight, all the important main characters start dying one by one until eventually Bella and Edward kill Arrow and burn his body. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was a vision that Alice showed him. The future, if he continues in this reckless journey of imposing his fellow companions' supremacy over all vampires. So he changes his mind because he doesn't want to die, especially after meeting another half-human, half-vampire, let's call him Gay Tarzan, who lives in Brazil. Remember Brazil? It always comes back. Brazil! So Renesmee will mature at the age of 7. She will be able to sustain herself on either blood, like a vampire, or human food, like humans, but she will stop aging once she fully matures in the body of an adult woman at the ripe age of 7 years old. And because Jacob imprinted on her, he will also stop aging, because that's what happens when werewolves imprint on immortal beings. They become immortal themselves. And that's what Alice sees in a vision. A full-grown Renesmee with her groomer, and the parents who allowed said grooming to happen because
it's a wolf thing.
And the entire saga ends with Bella now having learned to control her shield power to show Edward a quick recap of the entire series. And it's wild how she's smiling in none of the clips we see, because deep down, they're miserable together. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Twilight Saga. I know there's a lot of different reasons why this was wildly popular back then, and I genuinely had a lot of fun revisiting this, mostly because I spent the entire time roasting the films as I was watching them with my mom. She's a fan of how ridiculous they are. It was overall a great time. I hope it was a great time for you as well, because coming soon, I'm thinking of roasting the 50 Shades trilogy, because that was even worse. And I want to thank you for still being there. If you're still watching this, thank you for your support. Make sure to support the channel, like, comment, subscribe, join the family. And until next time, make sure to stay safe, stay sane, stay stupid. Follow me on my socials down below, and stay stuttering. Bye, guys.